Hey Moon Jade family. Thank you so much for your love and support. Please like, subscribe, and share. It's a simple way to support me and keep our stories coming. Thank you for being here. Now, grab a seat and let's continue the story. The soft chime of wedding bells filled the grand cathedral, their sound sweet and bright, almost mocking. Every pew overflowed with guests, glittering gowns, sharp tuxedos, the scent of fresh lilies mingling with expensive perfume. Cameras flashed as though capturing a fairy tale moment. For Kemi Williams, it was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Her palms were damp inside her silk gloves as she stood behind the heavy wooden doors, clutching a bouquet of white peonies. The delicate red beading on her custom gown sparkled beneath the chandelier light, the train cascading like a river of dreams behind her. She glanced at her reflection in a tall mirror nearby. The woman staring back looked perfect, radiant, serene, in love. But beneath the flawless makeup and elegant smile, Kemi's heart thudded so violently it hurt. "This is it, Kemi," she told herself. "After today, you'll finally belong somewhere. No more proving yourself. No more being the outsider." Her fiancé, Jian, had promised her a life of safety and devotion. He'd been her savior after years of betrayal by people who were supposed to love her, including her ex-best friend, Maylene, who had vanished from her life under suspicious circumstances. Today, Kemi believed, would wipe away those old scars. The organ music swelled. The doors opened. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Kemi stepped into view, veiled and glowing, escorted by her mother. She kept her chin high, ignoring the stares, the whispers about her being the black woman marrying into one of the wealthiest families in Shanghai. Today, love would silence them all. But as she reached the altar, her smile faltered. Jian wasn't there. Instead, there was only his groomsman shifting awkwardly, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. A cold, creeping dread slithered up Kemi's spine. Where is he?" she whispered, her throat dry. The groomsman swallowed hard. "Kemi, he's gone." The world tilted. "Gone? He left. With Maylene." The words were like a blade to her chest. They left for Hong Kong this morning. "I'm so sorry." The rest of his sentence was drowned out by a collective gasp, murmurs exploding like wildfire. Cameras flashed wildly as if to capture her humiliation frame by frame. Her mother's grip tightened on her arm. "Kemi, we should go," she hissed, trying to shield her daughter from the gawking crowd. But Kemi couldn't move. Her bouquet slipped from her fingers, hitting the marble floor with a muted thud. Maylene. Her best friend. The girl who had once held her hand through heartbreaks, who swore she'd never betray her. And Jian, the man who had looked into her eyes just last night and promised her forever. The cathedral's opulence blurred through Kemi's tears. Heat and shame burned her skin. This wasn't just heartbreak, it was public execution. Flashes went off. Someone whispered, "Did you hear? She was just a pawn. He was always in love with Maylene." The whispers grew, swelling into a tide that threatened to swallow her whole. "Get me out of here," she choked to her mother. They fled through a side door, Kemi's once perfect train snagging and tearing as she stumbled into the humid night air. Rain began to fall, soaking through the silk and lace as she ran aimlessly through the back alley behind the cathedral, her tears mixing with the downpour. Her chest heaved with ragged sobs. Why would they do this to me?" A sleek black car pulled up, its engine purring like a predator. The rear window lowered smoothly, revealing a man's face, strikingly handsome, dangerously calm. His black suit was immaculate, his posture exuding power and control. Kemi Williams. His deep, accented voice cut through the rain. She froze, trembling. "Who are you?" The man's gaze swept over her ruined gown, her trembling form. "I am Kang Chi," he said simply. The name hit her like a jolt. Jian's adoptive father. The mysterious billionaire she had only met once, who ruled the Li family empire with an iron fist and icy detachment. Rumors swirled about him, that he was ruthless, untouchable, a man who crushed enemies without lifting a finger. "You shouldn't be out here alone." His tone was matter-of-fact, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "Get in the car." Kemi's first instinct was to refuse. This man was cold, terrifying even. But the alternative was standing alone, humiliated, in the rain with reporters closing in. She slid into the plush leather seat, shivering as the door shut with a soft click. Inside, Kang Chi studied her like a puzzle piece he intended to solve. My son has shamed us both today, he said, his voice like steel wrapped in silk.
Kemi flinched.
Your son ruined my life. He is no son of mine, Kang Chi said flatly. He is an adopted heir who has forgotten his place. His hand moved to pour her a glass of water, the motion precise, controlled. I despise weakness, Miss Williams. But betrayal? That, I will not forgive. Kemi hugged herself, wet fabric clinging to her skin. What does that have to do with me? Kang Chi's lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. It means, he said slowly, that you and I have a common enemy. Her breath caught. I do not offer words lightly, Miss Williams. What he did to you, to us, will not go unanswered. He leaned closer, the scent of expensive cologne wrapping around her like smoke. You want revenge? You want to destroy him, humiliate him, make him regret the day he betrayed you? Kemi's heartbeat thundered in her ears. More than anything. Then marry me. The car seemed to freeze around her.
What?
Marry me, Kang Chi repeated, each syllable deliberate. Publicly, boldly. Together, we will crush him beneath the weight of our union. I will protect you, elevate you, and in return, you will help me ensure he never rises again. Kemi stared at him, stunned. This was madness. He was Jian's father, his adoptive father, yes, but still. Marrying him would ignite a scandal unlike anything the city had ever seen.
And yet,
her mind flashed back to the whispers, the laughter, the look of pity in the crowd's eyes as her dreams were ripped apart. She saw Meline's smirking face, Jian's hand intertwined with hers. A slow, burning anger replaced her fear. What if I say yes, she whispered. For the first time, Kang Chi's eyes softened, not with warmth, but with a dark, magnetic intensity that made her shiver. Then you will never be powerless again. Outside, the rain poured harder, washing away the last remnants of the bride she had been just hours ago. Inside the car, a new woman was born. Kemi lifted her chin, her voice steady. Then I will marry you. Kang Chi's smile was sharp and victorious.
Good, he said.
Let the world watch as we burn him to the ground. The morning light filtered through the skyscrapers of Shanghai, sharp and golden, but Kemi didn't feel its warmth. She sat rigidly before a gleaming vanity, surrounded by stylists who moved like a whirlwind, brushing, pinning, draping. Her reflection was a stranger, a vision in a crimson silk qipao embroidered with golden phoenixes, her hair coiled into an intricate bun. Just 24 hours ago, she had been a devastated bride, her white gown ruined by rain and tears. Now she was about to marry again, not her runaway groom, but his adoptive father.
The speed of it all was dizzying.
Kang Chi hadn't given her time to think, only to act. The marriage license had been expedited overnight, the media strictly barred from details. Even her mother hadn't been allowed near her this morning, though a staggering amount of hush money had been sent to keep her calm. Do you love him? One of the younger stylists whispered, wide-eyed, before being hushed by an older woman. Kemi stared into her own reflection. Love?
No.
This wasn't love. It was survival, and a carefully sharpened blade aimed at Jian's heart. Her fingers clenched in her lap. Love has nothing to do with it, she said softly. The room fell silent. The ceremony took place at Kang Chi's private estate, a sprawling mansion nestled on the edge of Westlake, where the waters shimmered like liquid jade. Everything was lavish yet controlled. Crimson drapes, golden lanterns swaying gently in the breeze, hundreds of orchids perfuming the air. Kemi descended the marble staircase alone, her heart pounding like a drum. At the base of the stairs, Kang Chi waited. He was devastating in a tailored black suit with a dark crimson tie, his presence commanding and unnervingly calm. Where Jian had always been warm and charming, Kang Chi was pure steel, sharp lines, cold control, an aura of power that made everyone in the room lower their gaze. For the briefest moment, their eyes met. Something electric sparked there, a current neither of them acknowledged but both felt. You look, he paused, as though compliments were foreign to him. Formidable. It wasn't beautiful or radiant, but somehow, the word sent a strange thrill through her chest. Good, Kemi said, her chin lifting. That's what I intend to be. A corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Almost. The ceremony was quick, efficient. Kang Chi recited his vows in a deep, commanding voice that seemed to echo through the hall. When it was Kemi's turn, she spoke clearly, her voice carrying like a challenge to the world. I vow to stand by your side, she said, locking eyes with him, to protect what is ours, and to never be powerless again. Kang Chi's gaze flickered, not surprise, not approval, but something darker.
Possessive.
When the officiant declared them husband and wife, he didn't kiss her softly. He claimed her. His lips were firm, deliberate, sending a jolt of heat down her spine. For a moment, Kemi forgot the cameras, the crowd, even her rage. There was only the iron grip of his hand at her waist and the terrifying allure of a man who never, ever let go. Hours later, they arrived at a high society gala, their first public appearance as husband and wife. The venue glittered like a palace, crystal chandeliers, silk-covered tables, a sea of Shanghai's elite buzzing with speculation. Rumors had been rampant all day, but no one knew for certain, until now. As Kang Chi escorted Kemi into the room, silence rippled outward like a wave. Is that impossible? She was supposed to marry Jian yesterday. The whispers were delicious, sharp-edged. Kemi felt them slice across her skin, but instead of shrinking, she straightened her shoulders. Kang Chi's hand rested firmly at her lower back, not tender, but possessive, a silent command. Do not falter. She didn't. If they were going to stare, then she would make them choke on it. Kemi glided through the crowd like a queen, her crimson gown hugging every curve, her chin lifted high. The air was thick with judgment, but she caught glimpses of something else too. Admiration, even fear. At the far end of the ballroom, a familiar face froze her in place.
Jian.
He stood beside Meiline, both dressed impeccably, both pale with shock. Meiline's perfectly painted lips parted in horror, while Jian's hands clenched at his sides. Kemi, he breathed, disbelief and rage twisting his handsome features. Every muscle in Kemi's body screamed to tremble, to run. But Kang Chi's presence was an anchor. She leaned into him, deliberately, sliding her hand along his chest. Husband, she said sweetly, loud enough for everyone to hear. Kang Chi's eyes glittered like obsidian.
Wife.
The single word detonated in the room. Gasps, whispers, the sound of glasses clinking as they were set down too hard. Jian staggered forward, his composure shattering. You married him? Kemi smiled, a razor's edge of triumph and pain.
Why not? She said coolly.
Since my original groom ran away with my maid of honor, I thought it only fair to marry someone worthy of me. Meiline's face went crimson. Jian's fury was volcanic. You think this will last? You think you can just?
Enough. Kang Chi's voice sliced through the chaos like a blade. The crowd instantly fell silent.
He stepped forward, placing himself between Kemi and Jian, his towering form radiating menace. This is my wife, he said, each word like a decree. You will not speak to her, you will not look at her, unless I permit it. Jian's jaw worked furiously. You can't just. I can, Kang Chi said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. And I will. The two men stared at each other, the tension crackling like a storm about to break. Kemi slipped her arm through Kang Chi's, her smile sweetly poisonous. Come, darling, she said, savoring Jian's anguish. Let's enjoy the evening. As they walked away, the crowd parted like water before them. Behind her, Kemi could hear the murmurs growing louder, a tempest of scandal and disbelief. But for the first time since yesterday, she felt powerful. Desired. Untouchable. Still, beneath the triumph, a strange flutter stirred deep in her chest whenever Kang Chi's hand brushed hers. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was dangerous. Very dangerous. Back in their private car, the silence between them was thick, humming with unspoken things. You played your part well tonight, Kang Chi said finally, his gaze fixed on the city lights outside. So did you, Kemi replied, though her pulse was erratic. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. Remember, Kemi. This marriage began as a weapon. Do not forget why you are here. I haven't forgotten, she whispered. But as their eyes locked, heat coiled low in her belly. For a fleeting, terrifying moment, she wondered if revenge was the only fire burning between them. For Kemi stood alone in one of the side corridors of another gala, her breath shallow, her heart still pounding from the battlefield of the ballroom. Even now, the murmurs of scandal still swirled like smoke in the distance, whispers of the runaway groom and the bride who'd married his father. Her fingers brushed the cool marble wall as she exhaled shakily. She had done it. She had faced Jian and Meiline without breaking.
But now that the crowd was gone, the weight of it all crashed into her. "You look breathtaking tonight." The voice came from behind her, smooth and familiar in a way that sent her stomach twisting. Kemi froze. Slowly, she turned. Jian stood a few feet away, his tuxedo impeccable, his expression a storm of emotions: anger, desire, regret. His usually confident posture was tense, coiled like a predator about to strike. "You have some nerve showing your face here," Kemi said, her voice cold. He flinched, but only for a moment. Then his lips curled into a smirk. "You married him just to hurt me, didn't you?" Kemi's hands clenched at her sides. "You don't get to talk about hurt, Jian. You humiliated me in front of the entire world. You left me standing there like a fool. And for her." A flicker of shame crossed his face at the mention of Maylene, but he recovered quickly. "You don't understand," he said, stepping closer. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But we still belong together." Her laugh was sharp, brittle. "Belong together? You left me at the altar." "I panicked," he snapped, the mask of smooth charm finally cracking. You're different, Kemi. Strong. Real." Maylene, he swallowed hard. Maylene was just easy. The audacity of his words stunned her. "You don't get to come here and rewrite history," she hissed. "I came here to fix it," Jian said, his tone desperate now. "Leave him, Kemi. Whatever this performance is, whatever game he's playing, it's not worth your soul." He reached for her hand. "Come back to me. I'll do anything. I'll even touch her, and you won't have hands left to regret it." The deep, icy voice cut through the air like a blade. Both Kemi and Jian turned to see Kang Chi standing at the end of the corridor, his presence a towering shadow of control and barely restrained fury. His eyes, dark, unreadable, locked on Jian's hand where it hovered near Kemi. Jian's jaw tightened. "Father. You lost the right to call me that the moment you betrayed me," Kang Chi said, his tone lethal. He walked forward with measured precision, each step radiating authority. "You have 30 seconds to remove yourself from my sight." Jian's nostrils flared. "And if I don't?" Kang Chi didn't even blink. "You won't like what happens next." For a tense moment, no one breathed. Then Jian laughed bitterly. "So this is what it's about. Possession. Control. You never cared about her. You just wanted to punish me." Kemi's stomach twisted, even as her mind screamed at her not to react. "You're wrong," Kang Chi said quietly. His gaze flicked to Kemi, unreadable. "But you've already done enough damage with your lies." He stepped closer to Jian, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "This is the last warning you will receive." Jian's fists clenched. His next words were venomous. "You think you've won. But this isn't over, father." He stormed away, leaving the scent of anger and expensive cologne in his wake. When the corridor was empty, Kemi let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," she murmured. I didn't know what he was going to." "Do not thank me," Kang Chi said sharply. His control was slipping, his usually perfect composure fractured. "You should never have been alone in the first place. You are my wife now, Kemi. That means something." The way he said her name, low, fierce, sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. "It's not like I asked him to corner me," she said defensively. "You didn't need to," Kang Chi growled. "You've always had that effect on men. Even my adopted son isn't immune." Kemi blinked, startled by the edge of jealousy beneath his words. "What are you implying?" she demanded. He stepped closer, his height and presence swallowing the space between them. "I am not implying anything. I am stating a fact," he said, voice low. "You are magnetic. To him. To me. To everyone who looks at you." Her breath caught. "To you." For a heartbeat, the air between them was electric, charged with something neither of them dared name. Kang Chi's hand lifted as though to touch her cheek, then stopped, curling into a fist instead. His jaw was tight, his self-control visibly fraying. "This marriage began as a weapon," he said hoarsely. "I told you that." But, his voice faltered, the first sign of vulnerability she had ever seen from him. "Some weapons are too dangerous to wield." Before Kemi could respond, he turned abruptly and walked away, leaving her trembling in the empty corridor, her pulse pounding like a war drum. Later that night, Kemi sat on the edge of their massive bed, the city lights spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her thoughts were a tangled storm. Jian's desperate plea, Kang Chi's barely restrained passion, the dangerous thrill that sparked whenever they touched. She didn't know when it had shifted, when this arrangement had begun to feel like something more than revenge. But it terrified her. Kemi. His voice rumbled, low and warm. Her chest tightened. Come in. Kang Chi entered, dressed simply in a dark silk shirt, sleeves rolled up to his forearms. There was a glass of wine in his hand, but his eyes were locked on her. I wanted to check on you, he said. After what happened with Jian today. I don't want you feeling unsafe. She swallowed. I'm fine. But she wasn't. The sun's glare at a restaurant earlier, his clenched fists, the way he had stormed out. It all left her uneasy. Kang Chi set the glass on the table and crossed the room slowly. He stopped just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, his presence swallowing her whole. I want you to understand something, he said, voice low but steady. What you did at that altar, walking away, choosing yourself, and me, you have nothing to regret. If anyone tries to hurt you, Kemi, they go through me first. Her breath caught. She could feel it then, the shift. His words weren't just protection. There was something raw, unguarded in his gaze tonight. Why do you care so much? She whispered before she could stop herself. For the first time, Kang Chi hesitated. His jaw flexed as though he was weighing what to reveal. Because, he said slowly, his voice almost a growl, you deserve someone who sees your worth. And maybe I'm selfish enough to want to be that person. The air between them crackled. Her pulse roared in her ears. Before either of them could speak again, the door slammed open. Jian stood there, his face twisted in anger. Of course, Jian spat. I should have known. My father the saint, sweeping in to claim what was mine the second I made a mistake. Jian, Kang Chi warned, his voice sharp now. Leave before you say something you regret. But Jian only laughed bitterly. Oh no, I'm not leaving. Not until she knows who you really are. Kemi froze. Jian's smirk widened. Tell her, father. Tell her what happens to people who get close to you. Or should I? Kang Chi's eyes darkened, the calm before a hurricane. Enough. For a moment, the three of them stood locked in a silent war. Then, with a bitter curse, Jian turned on his heel and stormed out, the echo of his anger trailing down the hall. Kemi's heart pounded. What is he talking about? She asked softly. Kang Chi looked at her, eyes full of shadows. Some truths, he said quietly, aren't meant to be told when tempers run hot. Trust me, Kemi. I will handle him. But as he left, she could feel it. This was only the beginning. Jian's fury wasn't cooling. It was about to boil over into something dangerous. The Chun estate was silent, but beneath its polished marble and pristine hallways, rage pulsed like a living thing. Jian had been quiet for 2 days. Too quiet. Kemi noticed it first. The way the staff avoided eye contact, the hushed whispers that trailed behind her when she walked past, the faint sound of something crashing in Jian's private wing the night before. She didn't have to guess why. She felt the heat of his anger every time she thought back to that moment in her room with Kang Chi, the way Jian had looked at them like they were two thieves stealing his entire life. Now, she sat across from Kang Chi in the sprawling study, trying to read the calm mask on his face. You've been different, she said softly, her fingers tightening around the teacup in her hands. Since Jian barged in that night. You're on edge, aren't you? Kang Chi's eyes flicked to hers, sharp and calculating. I'm being cautious. Jian's temper has always been his weakness. But now, it's something darker. The heaviness in his voice made her chest tighten. What do you think he'll do? Kang Chi leaned back, his posture deceptively relaxed. I think my son is about to make a very foolish mistake. One that will cost him dearly. The warning in his tone sent a chill through her. Later that evening, the Chen family's elite circle gathered for a private dinner. The atmosphere was tense. Kemi wore a deep emerald silk gown Kang Chi had sent to her dressing room that morning. It hugged her curves perfectly, exuding elegance and power. Beside her, Kang Chi was a vision of controlled dominance, black suit, sharp lines, his hand steady on hers as they descended the grand staircase together. From across the room, Jian watched, a storm barely contained beneath his flawless exterior. His jaw tightened as he saw the way his father's thumb brushed the back of Kemi's hand, the way she leaned into him, laughing softly at something he said. Every gesture screamed of intimacy. Every second screamed she's mine now. By dessert, Jian could no longer contain himself. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "I'd like to make a toast," he announced, voice shaking. Kang Chi's gaze sharpened, a predator sensing danger. "Jian," he said calmly, "sit down." But Jian only smirked, lifting his glass high. "To my father. The man who taught me everything I know about loyalty and betrayal. And to Kemi, the woman who showed me just how low a man can sink to get what he wants." Gasps rippled through the room. Kemi froze, her heart hammering as whispers erupted around them. Kang Chi rose slowly, his presence commanding instant silence. "You've had too much to drink," he said evenly. "Go to your room. Now." "Or what?" Jian sneered. His glass shattered on the floor. "You'll replace me entirely? Take everything from me." When Kang Chi didn't respond, Jian's face twisted into something unrecognizable. "You already did. You took her. You took her, father." Moments later, Jian fled the dining hall. Kang Chi ordered his men to follow, but Kemi's instincts screamed that something terrible was about to happen. "Kang Chi," she said breathlessly, clutching his arm. "He's not just angry, he's broken. He's going to do something awful." And she was right. Hours later, they found Jian in the family's private garage, standing beside Kang Chi's sleek black luxury car. His hands trembled as he fumbled with a lighter and a small canister of gasoline. "Jian." Kang Chi's voice boomed through the space. Jian spun around, wild-eyed. "You don't get to win. You don't get to take her and pretend you're the noble one. You think this will fix anything?" Kang Chi roared, stepping forward. "You'll destroy yourself before you ever hurt me." Jian's gaze flickered toward Kemi, who stood frozen behind Kang Chi. "She was supposed to be mine," he whispered, broken and furious. "You don't deserve her." Before anyone could react, Jian lunged forward, the lighter sparking. But Kang Chi's men were faster. Two of them tackled Jian to the ground, ripping the lighter from his hand. His screams echoed through the cavernous space as they restrained him, his rage collapsing into sobs of frustration and defeat. "Get him out of my sight," Kang Chi commanded, his voice like steel. As Jian was dragged away, his eyes locked on Kemi's. "This isn't over," he spat. "You'll regret choosing him." When the garage finally emptied, Kemi stood trembling in the heavy silence. "That was insane," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. He could have killed us." Kang Chi turned to her, his face softer now, though his jaw was still tight with anger. "He won't hurt you, Kemi. I promise you that." "But how can you be so sure?" He stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. The intensity in his eyes made her breath hitch. "Because I will destroy anyone who tries. Even if it's my own blood." Kemi's tears spilled over. In that moment, she wasn't thinking about revenge or appearances. She was thinking only of this man who stood like an unshakable wall between her and the chaos of the world. Their lips met, fierce and desperate, sealing a connection that had been building from the moment she walked away from Jian at the altar. When they finally broke apart, Kemi whispered, "What happens now?" Kang Chi's thumb traced her cheek. "Now," he said darkly, "we build our future. And Jian learns what it truly means to challenge me." The sun rose over the Chen estate like a reluctant witness to the chaos that had unfolded the night before. For the first time since her wedding day that wasn't, Kemi woke in Kang Chi's arms. She lay still, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was the only thing anchoring her after the storm. Images of Jian's wild eyes, the gasoline, the sharp smell of fear, they all swirled through her mind like a nightmare she couldn't shake. Kang Chi stirred, his arms instinctively tightening around her. "You're awake," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep but still commanding. "Barely," she whispered. "I didn't think I'd ever close my eyes after last night." His thumb traced soothing circles along her arm. "He's gone, Kemi. Jian won't come near you again." She pushed up on her elbows to look at him. "Gone where?" Kang Chi's expression hardened. "The police have him. He'll be charged for attempted arson and reckless endangerment. My lawyers will ensure he doesn't slip through the cracks." For a moment, Kemi just stared at him. The calm ruthlessness in his voice was both terrifying and intoxicating. "You turned him in," she said softly. "I protected you," Kang Chi corrected, his tone firm. "Even if he was my son, adopted or not, I will not let anyone hurt you. Ever." Her throat tightened. You really mean that? He cupped her face, his dark eyes burning with sincerity. Kemi, from the moment you stood at that altar and chose me, you became mine. Not as a possession, but as my equal. You are the first person in my life who saw me not just as a powerful man, but as a man who could love. Her heart ached at his words. This had started as revenge, as survival, but somehow, against all odds, it had become something real. By mid-morning, the scandal had spread through the city like wildfire. News outlets splashed headlines across every screen. Prominent heir arrested after violent incident at family estate. Billionaire Kang Chi's adopted son in custody following attempted arson. Mystery bride at center of Chen family drama identified. Kemi's phone buzzed endlessly with calls from people she hadn't heard from in years. Some were concerned, others hungry for gossip. But she ignored them all. The only person she wanted to face was Kang Chi. When she found him in his private office, he was on the phone, speaking rapid Mandarin, his tone clipped and authoritative. He ended the call the moment she stepped inside. They're circling like vultures, he said grimly. Investors, rivals, journalists, they all want a piece of this mess. And me? She asked quietly. What do they want from me? He crossed the room in 2 strides, taking her hands in his. They will try to paint you as a schemer, as the woman who destroyed a family. But I will not let them define you. Tonight, you and I will attend the charity gala at the Imperial Hotel. In public, in front of everyone, I will make it clear where you stand, by my side. Kemi's breath caught. You'd do that? After everything? I'd burn the entire empire down before I let them tear you apart. The gala was a dazzling affair, filled with the city's most powerful figures. Whispers followed Kemi the moment she entered the ballroom, her hand resting on Kang Chi's arm. She wore a crimson silk gown, bold and defiant, the same color she had worn on the day Jian left her at the altar. But tonight, there was no heartbreak. Tonight, she was fire reborn. Kang Chi was a vision of controlled dominance, his presence commanding every gaze. Together, they were unstoppable. As they reached the center of the room, a reporter dared to step forward. Mr. Kang, she called, voice trembling with anticipation, what do you have to say about the allegations surrounding your son and this woman? The room held its breath. Kang Chi's arm slid around Kemi's waist, pulling her close. His voice was calm but carried like thunder. This woman, he said, is my wife. She is under my protection, my care, and my love. Anyone who questions her place in my life will answer to me. Gasps rippled through the crowd, cameras flashing like lightning. Kemi's heart swelled as she looked up at him. In that moment, she realized this wasn't just a performance. He meant every word. Later, on the balcony overlooking the glittering city, Kemi and Kang Chi stood alone. The night air was cool, carrying the hum of distant traffic and the faint sound of music from the gala inside. You didn't have to say all that, she murmured. But you did. He turned to her, his gaze intense. I told you before, Kemi. You are mine. This world will know it, and they will respect it. Her breath caught as he took her hands, pressing them to his chest. You've given me more than revenge, she whispered. You've given me a chance to start over. To feel again. And you've given me something I never thought I'd have, he said softly. A reason to fight for more than power. Their lips met, slow and deep, sealing their bond not just as allies, but as lovers. When they finally broke apart, the city stretched before them, full of promise and peril. What happens now? She asked, echoing the question she'd once whispered in fear. Kang Chi's lips curved into a dangerous smile. Now, he said, his voice a vow, we rule together. And anyone who dares to challenge us will learn that even ashes can burn. Far away, in the cold confines of a police holding cell, Jian sat in silence. His eyes were no longer wild with rage, they were sharp, calculating. This isn't over, he whispered to himself. And for the first time, his smile was cold enough to promise war.